Come on up, we'll talk about it!
All right, I'm coming in.
Well, doggies, the Beverly Hillbillies was not just a backwoods sitcom about sudden wealth. It was a television revolution that twisted class comedy into cultural commentary. Behind the laughter were lawsuits, fistfights, creative mutinies, and network politics so intense they almost sank the Clampetts before they struck oil. Today, we are uncovering 20 weird facts about the Beverly Hillbillies that will change how you see this so-called harmless hillbilly romp. And stick around, because the bonus fact rewrites everything you thought you knew about the show's success. Let's dive in. The show nearly didn't air at all. CBS executives thought the Beverly Hillbillies was too stupid to succeed. In 1962, they mocked the pilot, saying viewers would never watch a family of rural misfits in Beverly Hills. Test screenings proved them wrong. Audience laughter erupted so loudly that it drowned out dialogue. CBS reluctantly aired it, and ratings exploded overnight. Within 3 weeks, it became the #1 show in America. The studio was stunned. It wasn't sophistication that people craved. It was raw, character-driven humor. What the suits thought was trash became treasure. The network went from ridicule to rewriting its entire comedy lineup around the Clampetts. Against all odds, a show nobody wanted became television gold. Buddy Ebsen almost died before filming. Buddy Ebsen, the beloved Jed Clampett, was nearly killed before he even arrived on set. During a screen test for a different project, he had suffered chemical poisoning from aluminum dust used in makeup. It left his lungs permanently damaged. By the time Beverly Hillbillies began shooting, he was struggling to breathe between takes. Yet he never complained. Crew members noticed him leaning on props just to stay upright. He played a man discovering oil, but behind the scenes, he was fighting to keep air in his lungs. His endurance gave the show its quiet strength. It was not acting, it was survival captured on film every week. Donna Douglas was sued for being too real. Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae Clampett, became so inseparable from her role that trouble followed her off-screen. In 1993, she sued Disney, claiming they used her likeness without permission for Sister Act. She insisted her wholesome image had been stolen for marketing. The lawsuit became national news and reignited interest in her Beverly Hillbillies days. Producers had warned her back in the 60s not to let the role define her, but it did. Casting agents refused to see her as anything other than Ellie Mae. Hollywood shut its doors. The lawsuit symbolized years of frustration, a Southern belle trapped forever in denim and pigtails. Max Baer Jr. was blacklisted after Jethro. Max Baer Jr. played Jethro Bodine with such comic brilliance that audiences assumed he was simple in real life. Hollywood did too. After the show ended, he could not get serious work. Studios feared audiences would laugh at anything he did. Frustrated Baer turned to producing and shocked the industry by making low-budget hits like Macon County Line, which became one of the most profitable indie films ever made. It wasn't just reinvention, it was revenge. He proved he was not Jethro the Fool. He was Max Baer the strategist who understood audiences better than the executives who had ignored him. The mansion was real and the owners regretted it. The Beverly Hillbillies mansion wasn't a set. It was the real Kirkby estate in Bel Air. Filming there turned the once quiet neighborhood into chaos. Curious fans blocked driveways, climbed trees, and even tried to swim in the property's pool. The owners regretted renting it out, but the paycheck was too big to refuse. After filming ended, the mansion became one of Los Angeles' most photographed homes. Ironically, when the show ended, the family that actually lived there moved away because they could not stand tourists shouting, "Where's Jed?" through their gates. Reality had become inseparable from the sitcom fantasy they had rented out for fame. The theme song was written in one night. The Ballad of Jed Clampett became one of the most recognizable TV themes in history, but it was almost an afterthought. Songwriter Paul Henning wrote it overnight in a motel room using nothing more than a cheap guitar and a tape recorder. He wanted something simple that sounded like an old folk tune passed down through generations. Bluegrass legends Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs recorded it in a single take. The producers were stunned when the song climbed the Billboard country charts. It wasn't just a theme, it was a story that framed the entire show. In 1 minute, it captured the American dream poverty turning to wealth luck, striking in a swamp of oil. Few realized that the song's casual twang hid a carefully crafted satire of greed and innocence that would outlive the show itself. Critics hated it, but audiences didn't care. When the Beverly Hillbillies premiered in 1962, television critics were brutal. They called it tasteless and idiotic, a national embarrassment. Yet, while critics sneered, America tuned in. Within a month, the show drew more than 60 million viewers every week. CBS executives couldn't believe the numbers. The laughter drowned the outrage. Sociologists later said the show reflected a working-class rebellion against the cultural elites. People love seeing simple folk outsmart rich snobs. The Beverly Hillbillies wasn't lowbrow humor. It was class warfare disguised as comedy. It flipped the script and made Hollywood confront its own hypocrisy. By the end of its first year, the same critics who mocked it were forced to admit that the Clampetts had become American icons. Irene Ryan hid a terrible secret on set. Irene Ryan, who played Granny, was adored for her wild energy and sharp comedic timing. But few knew she was gravely ill during much of the show's run. Ryan suffered from heart disease, yet refused to slow down. She would collapse between takes, only to return moments later demanding another shot. Cast members begged her to rest, but she refused, saying the Clampetts kept her alive. In 1973, during a live theater performance, she collapsed on stage and never recovered. Her final years mirrored the character she played: tough, unbreakable, and fiercely loyal to her audience. What fans saw as feisty comedy was really a woman's battle against her own failing body, fought with laughter as her only weapon. A secret rivalry boiled behind the laughter. Behind the friendly family dynamic, a quiet feud simmered between Buddy Ebsen and Nancy Culp, who played Miss Jane Hathaway. Ebsen was a conservative traditionalist, while Culp was outspoken and politically liberal. Their arguments during rehearsals were legendary. Crew members claimed entire shooting days were delayed by their verbal sparring. Despite the tension, their chemistry on screen was undeniable. Years later, Ebsen even publicly endorsed Culp's opponent during her real-life political campaign in Pennsylvania, which ended her chances of winning. It wasn't a sitcom rivalry. It was a cultural divide exploding long before America's own political polarization. And it all started on a set built for laughter, but powered by conflict. The set became a tourist trap overnight. Within weeks of airing, the Beverly Hillbillies transformed Los Angeles into a frenzy. Tour buses rerouted their schedules just to pass the mansion. Fans followed the cast to restaurants begging for autographs. The actors couldn't walk down the street without someone yelling for Granny or Jethro. CBS tried to keep filming locations secret, but word always leaked. The frenzy got so bad the crew had to hide props and costumes between takes to keep them from being stolen. The show wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was a national obsession. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next 10 facts reveal the chaos fame unleashed on the people who made the Clampetts come to life. The oil scene nearly burned down the back lot. The iconic opening sequence where Jed shoots the ground and oil bursts from the earth was not movie magic. It was a practical effect gone wrong. The crew built a high-pressure rig using black-dyed water and compressed air. During the first test, the system exploded, drenching equipment and shorting out the power grid on the backlot. Flames erupted when a generator caught fire. It took the crew hours to bring the chaos under control. The stunt coordinator swore he would never work with hydraulic rigs again, but the shot was worth it. It became one of the most memorable openings in television history, a literal explosion of luck that mirrored the show's theme. The danger on set made that gush of oil feel all too real. Nancy Culp lived her role off-camera. Nancy Culp, who played Miss Jane Hathaway, was a classically trained actress with a master's degree in English literature. Yet she leaned into her role so completely that even off-camera, she spoke like her character, meticulous, precise, and overly polite. Crew members said she sometimes forgot to drop the act during lunch breaks. Her dedication came from insecurity. Culp feared being fired after early table reads when CBS doubted her comic timing. Determined to prove them wrong, she built Miss Jane into a complex mix of wit and vulnerability. The irony was that the more authentic she became, the more she was typecast. Hollywood never gave her another role that matched her depth. For Nancy Culp, perfection became a prison she built herself. The Hillbillies were banned overseas. Believe it or not, the Beverly Hillbillies was banned in several European countries during its early syndication run. Officials in the United Kingdom and France labeled it cultural pollution, arguing that it portrayed Americans as ignorant and uncultured. Some networks even refused to air it during prime time, fearing diplomatic embarrassment. CBS executives fought back, calling it satire, but the stigma stuck. Ironically, decades later, those same nations embraced it as Americana, and universities taught it in sociology courses. The ban gave it mythic status abroad, turning what was meant as lighthearted fun into a symbol of American identity. The show that embarrassed politicians became a cultural export more powerful than propaganda. The costume budget was laughably small. Despite its massive success, the Beverly Hillbillies operated on a shoestring wardrobe budget. Ellie Mae's jeans were bought off the rack. Granny's dresses were recycled from old costume storage. Even Jed's hat was a leftover prop from another CBS show. The frugality was deliberate. Producers believed the Clampetts should look authentic, not polished. Donna Douglas often repaired her own clothes between scenes using a portable sewing kit. The contrast between their shabby outfits and the opulent mansion created unintentional visual comedy. That cost-cutting trick saved thousands of dollars, but also became the show's signature style. Audiences didn't just see poor people living among the rich. They saw the texture of poverty stitched into every thread on screen. The show was secretly used for political messaging. During the 1960s cultural divide, the show's themes of rural decency versus urban greed were quietly exploited by advertisers and political groups. CBS executives noticed that certain episodes boosted sales in small-town markets. They began pressuring writers to emphasize traditional values and downplay city life. It wasn't open propaganda, but subtle framing. When Lyndon Johnson's administration pushed Great Society reforms, critics used the show as proof that real Americans didn't need government help. The Beverly Hillbillies became part of a culture war it never intended to join. It was not just entertainment, it was politics and overalls broadcast to millions who saw themselves in Jed Clampett's eyes and didn't even realize they were part of a larger message. The cast wasn't allowed to watch other sitcoms. CBS wanted to protect the Beverly Hillbillies from creative contamination. Executives issued an odd rule: no main cast member could watch competing comedies during the season. They believed exposure to other shows might influence their delivery or tone. Buddy Ebsen ignored the rule once and got caught joking about another sitcom on set. The producers reprimanded him, claiming it could ruin the show's chemistry. This bizarre control extended even to interviews. The network demanded the cast maintain their characters' mannerisms during press appearances. What looked like cheerful simplicity on screen was strict orchestration behind the curtain. It wasn't freedom, It was a polished illusion crafted to keep the Clampetts separate from every other family on television. CBS tried to cancel it before its peak. By 1965, the Beverly Hillbillies was the highest-rated show in the country, but CBS almost axed it anyway. The network's executives wanted to rebrand the channel with sophisticated programming and urban appeal. They labeled the Beverly Hillbillies part of the rural purge. When advertisers protested, CBS backed down, but the warning lingered. By 1971, the purge finally came, and the Clampetts were sent packing along with Green Acres and Petticoat Junction. Ironically, the cancellation created a wave of nostalgia that boosted syndication profits for decades. It wasn't failure that ended the show, it was image politics. The very thing the Clampetts mocked, elitism, eventually killed them. The cast barely earned residuals. Despite reruns making millions for CBS, the main cast saw almost none of that money. Contracts signed in the early 60s didn't include proper residual clauses for syndication because no one anticipated rerun revenue. When the show hit global markets, the actors received flat fees that barely covered rent. Buddy Ebsen called it daylight robbery, but legal experts said it was standard practice. Their loss became a lesson for future performers. The Screen Actors Guild later fought to secure new residual standards inspired by shows like the Beverly Hillbillies. In a strange twist, the Clampetts who struck oil on screen lost their gold off it. The movie adaptation divided the original cast. When the 1993 movie version of the Beverly Hillbillies premiered, reactions from the surviving cast members were bitterly divided. Donna Douglas refused to endorse it, calling it a mockery of the original spirit. Max Baer Jr. condemned Hollywood for cashing in on nostalgia while misunderstanding the characters. Buddy Ebsen agreed to a brief cameo only after insisting his portrayal of Jed remain unaltered. Critics trashed the movie, but audiences flocked out of curiosity. It wasn't a revival, it was a eulogy. The film made fans realize how much warmth and innocence had vanished from modern television. Even failure reinforced the legend. The show inspired real oil investments. In the mid-1960s, oil companies reported a bizarre phenomenon. Thousands of Americans were investing in small drilling ventures after watching the Beverly Hillbillies. Some genuinely believed oil was easy to find. Geologists called it the Clampett effect. One Texas firm even used Jed's image in ads until CBS sued them. The show had become more than a comedy. It was shaping real economic behavior. The irony was rich. A satire about accidental wealth had convinced people they could drill their way to fortune. It proved the power of television to blur the line between fantasy and financial reality. The Clampetts almost joined the space race. In 1968, CBS considered a wild crossover special called the Beverly Hillbillies Go to the Moon. The idea was to have Jed accidentally buy land connected to NASA and end up training as an astronaut. Scripts were written, sets designed, and even NASA approved early footage. But after Apollo 11's success, the idea was scrapped. Executives feared turning space exploration into slapstick. The footage disappeared until fragments surfaced in archives decades later, showing the Clampetts in spacesuits. It was absurd, yet perfect proof of the show's unstoppable ambition. The Beverly Hillbillies began as a joke about class and ended as a mirror of America itself. It survived mockery, censorship, and politics, yet kept the nation laughing through change. The Clampetts never sought wealth or fame. They sought belonging. That innocence outlasted critics and reshaped television forever. Hit like and subscribe for more hidden Hollywood stories, where laughter hides the truth behind the curtain of nostalgia.